The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bit by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey there, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is André. I'm your host. Big thanks to Hulkamaniac for our theme song, Superpowers. And big thanks to you, listener, for tuning in to another fun-filled episode of the show. I just got back when the last show aired. I was in PEI at the Island Expo. I got to rub elbows with some really cool people, other comic industry folks. Catch up with some people I had in the show before, like Mike Ruth, for instance, Brendan and Troy Little, Sandy Carruthers, a few others here and there. Really fun little event. I got to meet a bunch of new people that will hopefully be guests on the show coming up. All very cool environment. It was my first con since COVID, and I had a lot of fun. It was really nice to get out there and kind of get back in the con vibe. I mean, I did well selling prints. I met a lot of really nice people. Got to catch up with folks I hadn't seen in a long time. It was nice. It kind of felt like a return to normalcy in some way. And, yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a really, really good time and a lot of fun. And hopefully we'll see more Comic-Cons coming back and things getting back to normal as long as things are safe and people are okay. That's all that really matters. And as long as those criteria can be met, I really hope there are a lot of more Comic-Cons coming back and other events like that as well. Other things in my life, like acting and wrestling, are picking up again as well because things are open. So it's really nice to get back to some of that stuff and get to, flex my creative wings a little more, get out there and do things that I enjoy to do. Today's guest is Brad Seymour, who's one of the people I mentioned before that I met at the con through Sandy. He has a comic named Glory Bound, which connects wrestling with comic books. Two loves of mine, of course, as I've talked about in the show before, and two loves of his as well. It was a really cool conversation. I got to talk to him a little bit at his table for Sandstone Comics, hanging out with Sandy. And, yeah, I'm glad we could work it into an opportunity for me to talk to him for the show. So it's a great comic. I know I talked about that in the show a little bit. If you're not reading it, I highly suggest it. It's beautiful art and a really fun little story. And Brad's out there, making his passion a reality, and he's doing a great job at it. And I think we all need to support people like that. And also just support independent comics. There's a lot of people out there trying to make their dreams come true. And you'd be surprised. The quality and the content of some of these books that are out there, they're amazing. And all they need is a shot, so why not give them one? Marvel Studios has recently released Moon Knight. I've seen episode 1. I've yet to see episode 2, which just dropped, I think, yesterday. I really liked episode 1, actually. It was a lot of fun. Some people were crapping on it, mostly on Oscar Isaac's English accent, but I was kind of okay with it. I thought it was great. He's kind of supposed to play sort of a nerdy, sort of a neebish dude who's lonely, and I think that worked really well. And as far as the accent goes, well, he's a guy that doesn't normally have an accent. With a dissociative identity disorder related to an Egyptian god that hides behind this, neebish character. So, he doesn't normally have one. So, so it kind of makes sense to me that maybe his accent may not be perfect, but I think it sounds pretty good to me, actually. And Oscar Isaac's a fantastic actor. I'm a huge fan of Ethan Hawke as well, who plays Arthur Harrow, the villain of the piece so far. I mean, there may be other villains, but he's the essential one that we've met. And, yeah, I'm excited to see more of it. So Marvel continues to do some great work, and I'm excited to see what the next step of that is. In my personal life, not a whole lot going on, just getting back to normal as far as work goes with everything. Wondering how I somehow managed to have not gotten COVID yet. It seems like everybody I know has gotten it or tested positive at some point. I'm kind of thinking perhaps I had it and was asymptomatic because I feel like I should have had it by now if I haven't. Because, the mask mandate's off here, and the current version of COVID is quite transmittable, like the most transmittable one yet. But as far as my rudimentary understanding of the science behind viruses goes, the more contagious they get generally, the lesser their efficacy. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but someone told me that once. And it sounded right, but I'm not betting my life on it. I'm going to follow what the public guidelines are, and now in Nova Scotia they're maskless and no gathering limits, and everything's pretty wide open. So with things being that way, it seems like a lot of people I know have recently had COVID, people I work with, and had to stay home for a week. I have yet to have any symptoms or test positive when I have tested. And so I managed to stay under, but I do have a sneaking suspicion perhaps I had it earlier and just didn't know it. But who knows? I'm going to continue to live my life and try to enjoy it, follow public safety standards, and read comics. That's what I've been doing mostly, just trying to catch up with some comics. My comic reading pile is staggering, so I'm hoping, I'm trying to I'm putting a mandate on myself to try to read 5 to 10 comics a day to catch up, which is a lot, but not that much, because some modern comics, mainstream stuff mostly, doesn't have a lot of text. It's mostly art, which is great. You can look at it, enjoy it, but you can breeze through a few of them pretty quickly, so I'm doing a bit of that. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get right to the meat of the show, which is my conversation with Brad Seymour. As I mentioned before, Brad's a super cool guy, comes from a military family, moved around a lot as a kid, had a love of wrestling, a love of comics, and joined them together in his indie book, Glory Bound, which I believe the Kickstarter for the 3rd issue will be coming out this summer. You should definitely check that out. But in the meantime, why don't you tune in, sit back, relax, grab some snacks. If you like snacks when you're in a podcast, unless you're like me, in which you're listening to podcasts while you're driving or mowing the lawn or making food or, cleaning, rudimentary stuff. Either way, take a snack. You deserve it. Whatever you're doing, you've earned it. Grab a quick snack and get back to what you're doing. Otherwise, just chill, relax, and enjoy this conversation with Glory Bound creator Brad Seymour.
There we go. Technology. Imagine.
Excellent. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Yeah, how are things with you?
Good. Busy.
Yeah?
Making books, man. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So how was the Island Expo for you?
It was really good. It was my first con behind the table. So it was a really good experience.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was really good. I had a lot of fun. It was nice meeting a whole bunch of people from the industry and everything. So it that there's people on the island, but actually being able to get out and meet everybody was really nice.
Yeah, I mean, Sandy's a good gateway for that too. Everyone seems to know him as well. So
yeah. So, but yeah, it's like I knew there was a comic book creator community around there, but it was nice to actually get in contact with people and put faces to names and stuff.
Oh, fantastic. So did you grow up in PEI?
Kind of, yes. We moved here when I was 15.
From where?
Ontario. Both my parents were in the military and they retired here in 1996. And
so were you like a military brat moving around before that, or was it all?
Yeah, we moved around 4 times. My parents were in the Air Force. I guess that's the branch that moves around the most. So we were in Ottawa, Trenton, Borden, and somewhere's out here on the East Coast, but I would have just been a baby. Born in Digby, Nova Scotia. So
right on.
Yeah.
Nova Scotian at heart. I knew I liked you for a reason.
Blue noser at heart. Yeah.
Very cool. So growing up, like moving around, I guess it's probably hard to get a sense of 15 is when you moved to PEI proper, right? You said so.
Yeah.
So up to that point, it must have been a lot of leaving friends behind over the years.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Like I always found like our last move when we moved from Borden, Ontario to PEI, I had a really tight core group of friends, and that was probably the hardest one to when we moved, when those friendships ended. I think it's weird as when you grow up in the military, you're kind of used to at any moment somebody can move away, as weird as is, just because of what their parents' job entails them to do. So I think you kind of get used to it, but I just at that point I thought, oh no, we'll be here. I'll graduate in Ontario. I'll always live in Ontario. And then my parents were like, no, we're retiring early. So, and we're going to go move to PEI. So I was like, okay, we had family here. So I was like, okay, we're going.
Wow. You seem way more accepting of that than I think the regular teenager would be.
Oh, no. I may not have vocalized it, but I'm happy about it at all. So
did you feel as a kid you could, like, I imagine with military parents, I wouldn't assume they're stern, but did you find it, like, could you voice concerns, or is it just that sort of household where you didn't with the military sort of efficiency?
No, I wouldn't say like, I never felt that my parents were like that atypical kind of military family where it was like, I'm the officer, you do, I given you. It was never really like that. My parents were very lenient, so it wasn't super strict. But I knew my boundaries though, for sure. Like I didn't push past because I knew that the pain would come if I push past my boundaries. So I knew if I wanted to be like, I don't want to go to PEI, we still would have been going. It would
just be a less easier process.
Yeah. So,
did you have any brothers, sisters?
No, I'm an only child.
Ah, wow. That seems like it sounds like you're a well-adjusted kid for the single child of military parents.
Yeah, I guess so. Hope so. At least I think I am.
We'll call them in and see what they think.
Yeah. Mom and dad will watch this and be like, my moments of rebelliousness, but
yeah, I mean,
so it was lessons quickly learned and stamped out. So,
well, I mean, it sounds probably like, I mean, you tend to, when you think of the sort of military family people move around, that you leave people behind a lot, that it probably sets you up for being able to deal with sort of not disappointment, but the idea that in life things come and go sometimes. So maybe it's like an early learned lesson that becomes easier when you get older because you had the early experience.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe, I guess so. I think that's why I'm so easygoing then.
Yeah, maybe so.
I was like, not too much bothers you. And I was like, but maybe, yeah.
That's funny. So was comics always a thing as a kid when you were traveling around, or was it more was wrestling the things? I mean, I'm sure Sandy probably filled you in on who I am, but
yes.
And the fact that I'm a professional wrestler as well. So obviously the two worlds intersect pretty well with your book. So
yeah, they were both there around the same time. So I would have been in the height of Hulkamania, right, when I was just a kid and watching wrestling on Saturday mornings.
How old are you, bro?
But I'm 40.
Oh, wow. Okay. You look a lot younger than you were.
I'll take it.
I was going to say, I'm 36, and I remember like Hulk Hogan Mania when I was young, but it was like just when I was really young. So if you were there for the cusp of it, I figured you had to be a little older.
Yeah. I was 8 and 9 and 10.
Oh, that's the best time to experience that.
Yeah. Pay-per-views every now and then. I mean, I remember the one where Hulk came out at the end of the Brett and Yokozuna match and won that Mania belt there. I remember watching, I think it was WrestleMania 7 was the first one to come from the Sky Dome. I think.
For someone that's involved in wrestling, my knowledge to like, I know other wrestlers that can pump that stuff out like that, but I watched it a lot when I was younger and then came to it more when I was a teenager to get into the level that I'm into it now. So there was like a big gray area in the middle where I didn't really experience it as much as some of my compatriots.
Yeah, I think like I've had two situations like that. Like I say, when I was a kid, like probably between 8, 9, and 10, I would watch wrestling, and then like 89, man, that Batman movie hit. Because my parents were in the military, we would always go on vacation in the summertime, and we would drive to PEI in Nova Scotia to visit family. I would always bug them if we stopped at a gas station and I saw comic books and stuff. I'd be like, after that 89 Batman movie, right? It was like, I want Batman comics. give me Batman comics. I want Batman comics. So I just drove them nuts. I think it was like kind of that old school mentality where like parents wanted you to read, but they don't want you to read comic books. Like they want like kids books or whatever, which for whatever reason that's considered.
That was always stuck in my craw when with that attitude, especially when you get old enough to realize that, like, I've run into parents now that know me from when I used to help at a comic store, I used to do conventions, who would be like, you know, you were always really nice to my kid and you gave him comics that he really liked and like helped him learn to read through comics. And it's like, I just don't understand why more parents back then couldn't understand the value of that. I think they do now, but certainly not back then.
Yeah, now it's just like as long as you're reading, right? As long as it's appropriate, and what does it matter what the format is of the reading. But yeah, it was after that Batman movie. It was it was comic books, and I mean, I would have been 89, right? So I would have been 8 years old when that movie came out. So it really didn't hit its cusp till, I want to say, and because I listened to comic book podcasts, it would be like October of 1994 when comic books consumed me fully. Like we had done a move. My parents got posted to another base, and it would just happen to be right in the first week of September. So I had started my first day of school in grade 8. Yeah, grade 8. And wow, long time ago.
Yeah, I know. I try not to think about the numbers on that too sometimes.
Yeah. First day of school in grade 8, second day of school, third day of school, I got home and my parents are like, we're moving.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, and they're like, we have to be there next Monday.
Oh my God.
So, like, I only got like another day or so of school with my friends, had to say goodbye and everything. We had to get stuff pack it up in the car. And then,
so did you guys always keep a sort of like, I don't want to say gypsy lifestyle, but like that sort of like not accumulating a lot of things because you had to move so frequently?
Not really. Like when
I guess the military pays for it, so you can have as much stuff to move as you want.
When we were in Trenton, that would have been our longest time that we were in any one spot. I think we were in Trenton for 8 years, I think. So, I mean, but staying in PMQs, like you don't really have, I mean, it's roomy, but it's not a big house by any means. Have the chance to accumulate a lot of stuff. That might've been something also too, that my parents were like, well, we don't want to have a lot because we might have to move at any moment. Right.
Yeah.
And with being in the Air Force, like, back then there were more bases, but like now it's like you're either in Trenton, Borden, BC, or Greenwood over in the valley, which is where my parents are now. And yeah, you could be going across the country at any point, right? So yeah, we didn't accumulate a lot of stuff, but I mean, my parents would have like my dad would have a Bowflex at home, and it's like just big stuff like that, like drum kits. Like my dad was a drummer and he plays guitar. Like he would always have a drum kit in the basement. And
no, that's good. Outlets are important.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like we didn't get stuff because we were worried about moving, but I mean, I wouldn't say we accumulated a lot of extra stuff in case we moved either.
So were your folks, like, not to dwell too much on your parents' job, but I find the Air Force interesting. Were they like pilots per se, or were they just involved in the Air Force in general?
No, they weren't pilots. My dad was a traffic tech. So
oh, wow. That'd be the tough one. Like an air traffic controller kind of thing?
No, he wasn't that, but he was the guy that was responsible for loading all the planes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and then he would go on missions. I don't think that's the right term, but like, say if a plane had to go from Ontario to like Canada, had a base in Germany. So he would go with that flight to help unload whatever was on the plane. He was highly trained to be able to move certain materials and stuff. And then my mom was an admin clerk, so that's just an assistant. So she didn't go on tours or anything too much. My dad, though, so he did a couple of tours in Somalia and stuff, some peacekeeping missions. And
Oh, wow.
yeah. So, and then I remember like when I was like super young, 6, 7, like he would go away, like just on those missions where cargo would go to somewhere's over in Europe or somewhere. So he would do a lot of trips like that, where he would be gone for like a week or so at most, and then he'd be home, and then he'd go away on another trip again. And it was kind of good. Like when he came back from Germany, like I got this massive, like 3-foot chocolate bunny rabbit. I'm like, it was as big as me. And I was like, oh, this is awesome.
He's like, hey, son, sorry, I haven't been around for a month. Here's the chocolate bunny.
Yeah. But yeah, no, yeah, that was
that's really cool. That sounds like a good relationship with him. That's lovely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's interesting you bring up Batman, because that it's funny because like I've talked to quite a few people on the podcast, and my age range is generally like a lot of some of the people that work for Marvel now are kind of around your age range, our age range, I guess. I'm not too far from you, but I haven't heard anybody talk about getting into it through a movie specifically, and definitely not through Batman. Because that movie was, I mean, such a dark movie comparative to what the source material was at the time. I mean, we had Frank Miller's Year One, and that was changed, and Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, which I think came after that movie or around the same time. Yeah. But you know, it wasn't like the comics didn't quite reflect how dark that those movies were, and they did shortly after because the movie's so popular. But I never really cared for it. Like as a kid, I didn't really like it. And then I didn't really care for it as a young adult, but now as a movie, like just because it was so different than Batman, I guess, like, you know, I think it was Jack Nicholson's Joker turned me off a little bit. But as a film fan, I've come back around to really appreciating those movies, because they're like almost, the second one especially is like a German art house film. Like it's just really weird.
Oh, yeah.
But it's wonderful. It's like a lovely, weird German art film. Like I love it.
Yeah, it was like that summer, right? Like Batmania, it just kind of took over the world, right? Like you saw it everywhere. It's like the base that we were at was about I think it was 3 hours north of Toronto, and went down for a Blue Jays game that summer. And like driving downtown Toronto, like storefronts were just lined with Batman merchandise, like the posters, like it was everywhere. And I finally wore my parents down. I had to wear them down to take me to see that, because I would have been 8, right? So it's not really appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the Wayne's getting gunned down and Joker shooting people all over the place and gas and all that. So yeah.
The conditions were like we had to go to a matinee. It had to be on a Saturday, like in the middle of the afternoon and stuff. Like they didn't want me seeing it at night or anything like that in case I had nightmares or anything. But yeah, I mean, I never did. And like that Batman movie was a gateway drug for me. And then it was like, because I don't know if you ever watched or not, YTV.
Oh yeah. I mean, where I grew up was pretty rural, but my grandmother had cable, so I used to go to her house to watch stuff like that.
So yeah, YTV, right? Like they did the reruns of the 66 Adam West series, right? And then I think that's kind of, my parents were all right with that because it was the hokey and goofy. And
but as a kid watching that, seeing how different it was from the movie that you loved so much, was that not a disconnect for you?
Not really. For me, it was just I wanted everything more Batman. Yeah, like kids video rental stores used to be a thing. We would go get
I remember
cartoons. I would wear those out. What else? All the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, like anything that I could get my hands on that way that was superhero related. Yeah.
And far from comics, I mean, as if it was your gateway was through film and television, it wasn't a great amount of stuff. I mean, you got those remnants of, you know, you got the Adam West Batman cartoon, the old Reeves Superman movies, the Spider-Man 66 cartoon, maybe the old Hulk Fantastic Four ones. So that's really about it. And if you went way far back, the 50 Superman ones, but those are probably hard to get on VHS at that time.
Yeah, and it's like even now, right? Like stuff that I might have been able to find, maybe being that young, who knows? But like the Captain America TV shows that they did in the 70s and 80s stuff, and
the movie was really fun. By fun, I mean terrible. The 80s movie.
Yeah, that Roger Corman Fantastic Four. Like, I'm sure I could have found that one somewhere in a video rental store too if I was really dedicated to finding it. But
Well, you'd have to find for that one. You would have had to find because when people would trade bootleg tapes, that's the only way you could get that one because it never
yeah,
actually had a release. But I had a friend, kind of a friend of a friend, who worked for a TV station, and they got a hold of a copy and gave me the VHS copy that had the Corman Fantastic Four movie on it and the Star Wars Holiday Special, which you also couldn't find anywhere.
yeah,
Yeah, it was a great double feature, I must say.
yeah. Funny enough, a coworker asked me about that because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I said, "Have you seen the Holiday Special?" And I was like, "No." I said, "George Lucas does not want that to be seen, so I'm perfect not seeing it." So
it's I mean, I don't know. I get why, because Lucas is like, well, I mean, I suppose since he sold it, not so much, but he was such a guardian of this perfect image of what he wanted the franchise to be with reinventing it all the time. But it's a fun part of the history. I mean, you get the first appearance of Boba Fett in a cartoon, which is fun. I mean, B. Arthur has a musical number on it. You know, you get Wookiees talking for 20 minutes with no subtitles. You have no idea what they're saying to each other. They're just growling for 15 minutes.
yeah.
So it's fun in its own right, but yeah, it is. There is a big caveat for the camp factor of it more than the actual real legibility of it.
Yeah, at least we got Boba Fett out of it.
We sure did. Cool. So then you said it all kind of cracked open for you mostly 94. So what was the impetus for that? For like really getting into comics?
Yeah. So when we moved, so it would have been my first day, but it would have been a week for everybody else, right? That had been there. Like I was in the classroom before all the kids came in, so that was kind of weird. And I was up at the front, and the teacher introduced me, and kids were like, "Oh, new kid," right? Because usually, I mean, not necessarily, but usually moves were timed around school years, so your parents probably wouldn't get moved till the end of the school year.
Yeah, so you're starting fresh.
Yeah, so you kind of have like the summer months, like the 3 months of summer to try and make new friends and stuff. But it was like we got to the base, and then like 2 days later, it was like, well, it's Monday, so you got to go to school. But there was a group of kids, and they had it really caught my eye was the October issue of Wizard magazine for whatever year that was. It had Violator on the front.
Oh wow!
And it caught my eye, right? So like 94, I was into comics around that time. I was really only paying attention to like Batman stuff, right? So I knew about like Night Quest and Nightfall, that whole Bane saga, breaking his back. So that was really, if I did get to a comic book store or the drugstore with the spinner rack, it was just Batman that I was going after. And, you make friends with the kids, and some of them were drawing, and I always loved to draw. And I just asked, can I look at this magazine? And then it just it opened me to so much stuff. And even on the base, we have a store, it's called the Cannex, and it's broken into two parts. So there's like a grocery store part, and then there's like the department store part where you can buy furniture and TVs and all that kind of stuff.
So is this only for people, military people?
Yeah.
Access. Yeah. Interesting. So there's like little mini stores in the bases that are only for the family and crew.
Yeah. Well, at least that's what it was like back then. I can't really be like that now.
Oh, that's still interesting. I didn't realize that. That's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so there was two separate sides, and each side had a comic book section, but it was all just Marvel and DC stuff, which was fine. Like I got into the Spider Clone saga and Scarlet Spider.
See, I love people our age, because when we were our formative years, we're reading what most comic fans that have been around longer consider the worst stories in like comics. They're like, the Clone Saga was garbage. Batman breaking his back was terrible. Azrael Batman. It's like the worst period of all these big comics. And to me, I'm like, that's what I grew up on, though. Like, it's still fun to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like this Wizard magazine, like it had all the Image stuff. It had the Jim Lee art. It had Todd McFarlane art. wherever you think about him, it had Rob Liefeld art. Like and that image stuff sucked me in as someone who was an artist. Like I liked the image, the way the image art looked better than the Marvel or DC stuff at that point.
Well, they really built that empire on sort of, because you were the right age too, right? Like your early teens, like wanting that cool hard edge thing. And, they gave it all tea and spades, all this dark, gritty sort of comic stuff that you weren't getting everywhere else. They really tapped into something amazing at that time period.
And it kind of felt a little taboo because it was more extreme, right? Like you had it was more violence. You'd get a curse word every now and again. Like we would go to a mall that was probably like a half hour away in Barrie. And I would always go to the Indigo or Chapters or whatever it was. And they had a spinner rack. And I always got Spawn because Spawn was the it thing to read from Image, right? And I don't think my parents would have let me get Spawn if they actually sat down and read the comic book.
Probably not.
With some of the stuff that was going on in a Spawn.
But that's the beauty of the fact they didn't take them seriously. They thought they were just disposable bubble gum, right? Stuff. So you could slip in that stuff and they'd be none the wiser. Just a comic book to them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so like from 94 on, that's when comic books were just the thing. And like, it's kind of because of Wizard, I found out two key things that was like, okay, I'm going to be a comic book artist. Cause up until that point, I told my parents I was either going to be a rock star. I was going to play in the NHL, or I was going to be an RCMP officer. So the rock star and the hockey player had kind of got taken off the table. And I was going to be an RCMP officer. And my parents were like, oh yeah, great. Like military parents, right? Like RCMP officer.
I was going to say, they must have loved that.
They were like, we can get behind that. Yeah, no problem. And then there was, because of Wizard magazine, I found out that Todd McFarlane was Canadian. Just at that point, no internet, right? Like you're just whatever information you can get. So, in Wizard, I found out Todd McFarlane was Canadian. And I was like, oh man, Canadians can make comic books? Because I thought you might have to move to America to be able to do that. Not knowing it then, but knowing it now, he was down in the States making comic books.
I mean, then you did have to probably move down there to really make a career, but now you really don't.
Depending on who you were, like I know John Byrne stayed in Alberta through his whole career.
Oh,
right?
really? I didn't know that. And I'm a huge fan of him. I really got to learn more about him. I love his work.
Yeah, but yeah, he stayed in Canada, so he would just stuff and expedite stuff down to the Marvel offices in New York. But yeah, that was one thing. And then there was another issue where they interviewed, his name is Trent Kanuga. It's a very hard last name to pronounce. He's the creator of Creed. And Wizard did an article on him, and he was 16.
Wow.
And he was making this comic book, and like, so like Wizard to me was like, this is if you're in Wizard, you're like big stuff, right? Like they cover everything. And I've read this article back and forth like 4 times over, just mesmerized that a 16-year-old kid was making comic books and was published in Wizard. And I would have been 13 or 14 at that time. And I'm like, he's only 2 years older than me. And then that's where it changed. And one night I said to my parents, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a comic book artist. And they're like, okay, yeah. Like kind of doing that, like,
it's not really going to stick.
Sort of the parent thing, right? When you're like a young teen and you're saying you're going to do something that's not really like a career at that point, right? Like, they're like, yeah, he likes to draw, he's good at it. Like, yeah, he wants to be a comic book artist. That's fine. He'll grow out of that, right? Yeah.
When I was a kid, everyone would say you need to be an animator for Disney. Like they would just go to whatever the most popular thing your art could take you towards for money and say you should go do that. And even Disney animators probably didn't make that much money comparative to like, it's not like, Walt Disney, I'm sure was sharing the lion's share of the funds of the animators.
Yeah. And yeah, so they're like, yeah, okay. And then, but I mean, at 14, I'm 40 now, and I still haven't gotten rid of doing that. And I mean, I have done it now. So I was like, there's no stopping me now.
What did you end up going into, like in college or whatever?
Yeah, so I went to Holland College. That's where I met Sandy. And funny enough, we were talking about this at IEX. I had applied to get into the graphic design program in 2007. And I didn't get in, just based on the merits of my portfolio and stuff.
So you would have been what, like in your mid to late 20s by then?
Yeah, I think I would have been 20, 25, 26 in 2000.
Did you take time off between high school and college?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I didn't have any plans. Like I thought, well, I'm going to be an artist, right? So
okay.
I did.
So you're still going on that. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was totally going on that. And then, so I had a brief bout of, well, when I hit 25 and I hadn't really done anything yet, I'm just kind of working at a minimum wage job. And I was like, well, maybe I should join the military. And then my parents were like, oh yeah.
Now finally we got him.
Yeah. So I went through the whole process, and I had applied to the graphic design program. Like I was just doing a lot of stuff, seeing what sticks. And I didn't end up joining the military. Just the process took a long time, longer than what I expected it to take. And then I just found other opportunities. So I ended up going to Holland College originally first to take the sport and leisure program and the personal trainer side of it. And then, funny enough, when I started that program in the second year is when they did the video game art and animation program. And then I ended up taking that a couple of years later after I had graduated from Holland College. So yeah, I had applied to the graphic design program. I didn't get in. My backup program was the sport and leisure program. So I did that. And then I applied for the fundamental arts program at Holland College because I felt like I'm 100% self-taught other than what I was taught in high school art class. So I took the fundamental arts program just to make myself better before I went into the video game program. When not even when I went into it, I took it more or less like, oh, this will make me better so I can hopefully get in. And then, it was there. Like I had proper focus and all that kind of stuff. And my arts at that time took a major leap from what I was doing. And so I did that program, and then I got into the video game program, and Sandy was in the graphic design program. So there was a little bit of crossover, especially around midterm and end year projects. The other instructors would also grade the projects that we were doing. And that's, I started talking to Sandy, like he'd see some of my work, and as much as I could when I was in the fundamental arts program, I would skew my work towards comic book work as much as I could, depending on the subject matter. Right. And that's when we started talking about comics and stuff. And he started telling me stuff because I knew I wanted to be a comic book artist, but I didn't know how to be a comic book artist. And just Sandy over these last years has just been amazing that way in like teaching me stuff. And I always remember this lesson, and I'll always give it to another artist if they're looking at doing a comic book as an art form, as a career. Is Sandy said, you got to fill your backgrounds with believable stuff. Okay? But he said, nobody's going to pay attention to it. But if it's not there, they're going to notice that it's not there. And I always remember that when I'm going to do a background or something in a panel, like kind of just, well, maybe if I just suggest something, and then I'm like, no, Sandy said, fill it with stuff so that it's believable. Because if you'll hear if the reader notices something that's not there, but if it is there and they don't say anything, that means you're doing your job as an artist. So yeah, it's just stuff like that that I've taken from his wealth of knowledge from being in the industry for as long as he has. But yeah.
So all along this journey, was wrestling still part of your life, or is that something you came back to later? Or?
So yeah, like wrestling, I probably stopped around that Hulk Hogan Yokozuna match when I was a kid, and it became comics. And then Attitude Era.
I was going to say DX. That's right. That's right. Right around the time everybody else checked back in.
Yeah, everybody running around like we were in high school, right? Oh, yeah. So the Austin 316 shirts were everywhere. The DX shirts were everywhere. Like you couldn't walk more than 10 feet without someone crotch chopping, right?
Yeah,
like,
yelling, sucking at you in the hallway at school.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was everywhere, right? Like me and my best friend Mitch, like when Jericho was around, we had like shiny shirts like he did. Yeah, all throughout the Attitude Era, watched consistently. And then I can honestly say, I think the last pay-per-view I watched would have been WrestleMania 18 with
Hogan and Rock, yeah. That was Rock or Hogan's or not? Oh, Rock and Hogan, right. Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
I remember that one too.
First match back after they had bought WCW.
Yeah.
Or his first big match back.
Yeah, it was that he was back in that end, the No Way Out pay-per-view before it. It's where they brought them back.
But we watched that pay-per-view at a bar, and the energy in that bar while that match was going on, it was amazing. Like if you can watch a pay-per-view with a bar full of, or room full of excited fans, like it was great. And then it was just like after that, it just kind of faded away a little bit. Like I know not Undertaker, but Cena and Orton were kind of the new young guys that were coming up. Like they weren't John Cena and Randy Orton like they are now, just starting. And then I kind of faded away. And then one day at work, it was the day after WrestleMania 31. Mm-hmm. Two coworkers, Ben and Ian, they were just losing it over the main event where Seth cashed in, right?
Right.
Ice of the century, and they were so excited, and they were making it sound so like exciting. And I was like, wow, I haven't watched wrestling in forever. And I was like, I said to Ben, I said, when's the next pay-per-view? And he's like, oh, it's like in 3 weeks. I was like, can I come over to your place and watch it? And and that's when I got back into wrestling. And I've noticed something with myself. If I get into something, I like dive headlong into it. Right?
I'm the same way. Yeah, I'm an all-in kind of guy when I'm into something.
Like I said to Ben, I was like, so like I don't know like anybody, right? So they're talking about Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. I didn't know who those guys were. I knew Brock Lesnar's name because he had been starting as well too. But I was like, so what should I watch? Like, is there anything I should watch? And the first thing that I was told to watch was CM Punk's pipe bomb. Mm-hmm. And me even not being a fan for a while, I knew that he was breaking kayfabe. Like he was like, I understood the importance of what he was saying and calling wrestlers by their real names and not their actual stage names and kind of stuff. Cause I think maybe the aura of like kayfabe, it's all real, had probably waned a little bit by that point. But
it had been long gone by that point, really. But
I just wasn't sure if the pipe bomb was the thing that just kind of put the nail in the coffin.
I think what it did was it. Not to get too deep into the ramifications of wrestling and on the world in general, but I mean back during the steroid scandal, and then when WWE to get around basically to get around laws so they didn't have to pay as much for having sports licenses, admitted that wrestling was fake, so they could get around that. Somewhere in between there was still not even the illusion that it was real. I guess in a way, yes, because it's like watching a movie. Like I know that Chris Evans isn't Captain America, but I watched the movie believing what it is.
Yeah.
So, but if midway through the movie, Chris Evans stopped and said, fuck Joss Whedon, for messing up for making me do this in the movie or something, then it like reality filters into a show where like it gets very meta very quickly. And and that introduced that element of it more to wrestling, where like angles would start becoming part of it that were outside, like almost kayfabe in quotes. I mean, it's all obviously planned, but angles would come in that were inspired by real life events, when the public would know that maybe like Matt Hardy got fired from WWE because he got in a fight with Edge because Edge slept with Lita in real life. So like the fans knew that because of the internet, so they would use that to make a feud they would put on TV. Like that's when stuff like that started filtering in.
Okay, yeah.
So it became more meta and almost a bit more realistic in that way, because real world incidents suddenly had ramifications within the wrestling world. And before, it seemed like they kept them very far apart. But now the line is very thin between both, because they do that all the time now in most wrestling matches.
Yeah. And then
but it was a magical moment.
It was. And I wish I had been around for it, but the whole Daniel Bryan, the Yes movement, that was the next other thing that I kind of did a deep dive.
One of my all favorite wrestlers. Daniel Bryan's one of the best.
Yeah. And I missed it by 1 year.
It's still out there. You can still go watch it. But I know what you mean. It does. Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't see it happen, but I've rewatched like the packages and stuff so many times.
You were watching AEW as well now? That seems to be the new.
Yes. I pay more attention to AEW than I do WWE right now.
I used to love NXT. That was my favorite wrestling show. And now it's gotten watered down a bit. And it seems like all the people I love most from NXT are over on AEW now. So it's like, that's my new NXT.
Yeah. And that's kind of like Glory Bound was kind of born out of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's interesting. So the rise of AEW?
Partly, like it was around that time when I was doing like the prep work and designing characters and stuff. I probably would have started around 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Glory Bound. I was just like, I knew I wanted to do a comic book about wrestling. Played around with some ideas. Like it was at one point, Glory Bound was going to be all like chibis, like the Japanese made chibis.
I was going to ask you about that. Were you like a manga fan? Because it does seem like a lot of influence in your work.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like manga and anime was like another thing in the 90s that was just starting super popular. And it was one of those things where, living on a military base, it was super rare to get a hold of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I could find it. It was very precious to me.
Was it like Dragon Ball Z and that sort of what the big public stuff was, or was it more esoteric than that?
Yeah, it would have been not even Dragon Ball Z. It would have been just Dragon Ball.
Oh yeah.
On YT, the first series. Obviously, Dragon Ball Z came after that, and I love that as well too. Like I have Dragon Ball Z influences in Glory Bound, but I
can see that in some of the character designs.
Yeah, the Street Fighter 2 anime.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, a lot of people talk about that one, but it was really good. It's like kind of the other one people don't discuss, which I always thought was really cool, was Fist of the North Star. That one doesn't come up a lot, but that was a super cool one. And I know John Cena's a big fan of that, to bring it back to wrestling. So.
But yeah, that was the first thing that I ever watched for anime wise, and then found out that like there was that whole I forget what the video line was, but it was manga. Or it might have just been manga video is what they called it. And it had, it always played trailers for all the other the anime movies that you could get.
Was it Viz Media?
No, it wasn't Viz. Viz was all like books. And
Okay.
They called this Manga Studios, but it was actually the movies.
Yeah, I vaguely remember it. I just can't think of the name of it either, because I remember the VHS tapes.
But it was one of those things where if you ever had a hockey tournament and you had to go over to the mainland, you went to like HMV and those places, right? Because they would be stocked up with that kind of stuff. So you'd be like trying to grab as much as you could. Even on PEI, they weren't quite as easily to get. But yeah, manga and anime. I'd say part of the big reason for that influence on my style is an artist. His name's Joe Madureira.
Oh yeah, very familiar. Battle Chasers.
Yeah, Battle
Yeah.
Chasers. Yeah, he was when I really started getting into comics, Age of Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
And he
I
was like
forgot he was like the main guy in that series, the artist in that.
artist. And I no matter what, I got a book if it was drawn by Joe Madureira. And I would get angry if he just did the cover and then I open up the book. Side, it's something that still really grinds my gears to this day is when there's different cover artists from the interior.
But they do that a lot now. Like almost mainstream books are almost all that now.
Yeah. Well, I remember my first ECC I went to, Ken Lashley was there and he was working for DC at the time. And he said, that's what they do. They get the cover to sell the book.
Yep.
He told me, he's like, he was working on Superman Doomed,
Mm-hmm.
and he had to do a cover with Doomsday on the front, like chewing Superman's cape. He said they called me and they said they needed this cover in 5 hours. Like he get in 5 hours, that's a tight deadline, no matter who you are.
Yeah, it's insane, especially if they want anything detailed or elaborate. So
yeah, but he said, yeah, that's what they're all about nowadays, right? It's the cover that sells the book. And sometimes I get it. Like I remember when DC got the Hanna-Barbera license, I bought a Scooby-Doo comic book because Jim Lee drew the cover. So I mean,
those books are actually like to talk. Like I haven't read all of them, but anything by Marky Russell. He did the art, and I'm blanking on the guy who did the story, or maybe he wrote it too. I think he may have wrote it too, but he did the Flintstones comic, which was incredibly good. It was a very intelligent comic. Like they use the sort of primitive society to sort of pick apart modern society and why we do the things we do and how kind of ridiculous it is through this sort of lens. Like they use it as a real social commentary, and it was really, really good. Like I can't suggest that series enough. It was excellent.
Okay. Yeah. I'll have to check.
But he did that. He also went on to do some other books, which were fun. That one that he did for, I think it's DC. Maybe it's not the one where it's like Jesus meets Superman. It's a Super Son or something, Super Sons. It was, it's an interesting story where Jesus comes back in modern times and he gets paired up with like the Superman in the world, who's basically, he's an analog, but and it's a very interesting comic. It was good. Yeah. Second Son, I think it's called, but yeah. So yeah, he did a few of those and I was very impressed with that. The Scooby-Doo one I heard was interesting too. It's like post-apocalyptic thing, right?
Yeah. That's we're going with. I only ever got the first issue.
Yeah.
And I didn't go too far with it after that. But
that's true. They do get you with that because I've always been a big Mark Bagley fan, so sometimes they hook me when he does a cover. But usually when he does the cover, his art's inside. So
that's kind of the only thing that kind of, well, not the only thing about comic books right now that grinds my gears, but that's the big.
my biggest complaint, I complain about on here a lot, is the big universe spanning event that goes through every book. And like if I'm reading Spider-Man and I'm liking the story, all of a sudden it just stops and there's 3 issues of something that I have no idea what's going on because I'm not reading every other comic. So
exactly,
that kills me.
Yeah, I always remember it. I don't know why, but there was the Future State crossover that DC did.
Yeah,
I think where all the books went into the future, and the event ran for 2 months from January to February. But if you bought all of the books to follow the whole event, it was something like $1,300.
Yeah.
To get the whole story, right? Like
I feel like the industry doesn't either is really wanting people to buy them digitally or really doesn't care or in trade and really doesn't care about floppy sales as much, like floppy comic sales as much as they used to, because like that's ridiculous.
Yeah. I don't think, the big companies are interested in floppies anymore.
Yeah. But I think it's mainly just a way to fuel interest to the movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is sad, but there is still a lot of quality out there, but it does make you seek out, different things a lot more, which is probably good because you're getting access to other comics and stuff you might not normally read.
Well, and that's why like Image is as big as it is and renowned as it is now, right? Because they're doing a lot of like creator-owned books.
Yeah.
And like even like the smaller the smaller, bigger studios like Boom and Dynamite and Dark Horse, like they're attracting like the big names that work at Marvel and DC to do something on their own that's hopefully a little bit more creative.
I think I've talked about this with a few guys that work for Marvel. It seems like if you have all these wonderful ideas that you want to use, if you put them in a Marvel book, you don't own anything. Like Ed Brubaker created the Winter Soldier, and they're making movies and characters and series about him, but he didn't create Bucky. So because of that, he's not getting anything residual beyond probably a thank you in the credits, and maybe they throw him some money to just say thanks, but it's not like a massive amount. Like a few people have stepped up and said stuff about that. Like Jim Starlin created Thanos, who's been a massive part of Marvel. I'm a huge Starlin fan, and I don't think he even got a ticket to go watch, or wasn't even told he was going to be in the Avengers until he showed up at the end. Like Starlin didn't even know he was in it.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, that seems to be the way. Like the comic book creators, kind of their stories are picked apart for plot points in the movie, and then you're lucky if you get your name in the credits as a thank you right near
So
the
if you
end.
have a great idea like that, you're going to want to just wait and go do it on an indie book where you're going to, if it becomes a movie or a TV series, you'll get actual money for it instead of for somewhere else where you'd get your normal paycheck and a thank you. Like I feel like there's not a lot of impetus to do something new and original or groundbreaking because you're not going to really reap the benefits of it.
No, yeah, and like I wouldn't even say it was as good as like even in the 90s, like when the Big Seven and stuff, right? They were doing creating all their original characters. Like there was a character creation deal that Marvel had for all those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And like I listen to Rob Liefeld's podcast every now and again, and now whether it's true or not, but he gets a percentage of everything Deadpool.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That was written into his contract, right? Like he gets a certain percentage of anything Deadpool. So
between the deal on his part, between
the movies alone, right? Like, and now, he's marketed Deadpool's used in everywheres. And so I don't even think because of that incident, the creator, if you create something now, it's like, it's that old, while you were worked for hire, right? Like whatever you create is ours and you get no say to it. So.
Yeah, no, so that's why I feel like those indie books have really, I think a few stand-up books like probably Walking Dead and Invincible really opened up what can come from that. And showed other creators like how big it can go from their creator-owned books that way. If, even guys like I've had Ben on the show who created The Warrior Nun, and like that's a Netflix show. So like that was a book he did, years ago. And, now it's just got picked up eventually to be a Netflix show. So like there's stuff that you don't even realize out there in the other that it's getting made into series is because comics are so big right now. And plus it's an easy sell. You can say, here's a book, it's already storyboarded. All the characters are here. The writers just have to make this into a format that fits the TV and you're done. Like it's a simple package that you can easily sell.
I have a couple of books over on my bookcase, and they say they have the little Netflix logo down on the bottom of the spine, right? Because that's somebody told me that's what Netflix is starting to do, is they'll pay for people to make a graphic novel, but they have rights to turn it into a series or a movie or anything.
So they already have the idea for the series and they tell them to make the graphic novel. That'd be like the impetus for it.
Yeah, like I think I created it to Netflix, and it as a graphic novel or something. I think that's how it works. And then if it's successful, then Netflix has the rights to
interesting
a TV show, I believe. But it's like Reborn is one of them. It's with Mark Millar and Greg Capullo.
Yeah, Mark Miller. A lot of his stuff, he seems to be written specifically to be a movie or TV show. Yeah, like he even draws the characters to look like actors that are out there that would probably play them in the movies. Not him, but he has the artist do that.
Yeah,
I mean, I like his stuff. I can't complain. I mean, most of it I really enjoy. So, Kingsman are fun movies. So, whatever he's doing is out there. But that's really cool. So,
working.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we'll see that Glory Bound show sometime.
Oh, hey, that's what I'm hoping.
Well, it
And
seems like wrestling's getting a resurgence in TV. I mean, they have that Heels TV show now and the Young Rock show. So there's some interest in the behind the scenes part of wrestling.
yeah, yeah.
Which is fun. But one thing I found interesting in the new book is kind of you injected a little bit of a supernatural element to it, which is something fun.
Yeah, it was. I had to think of. So the whole point of Glory Bound was it's going to be in universe, right? Like it's not actors or athletes playing a character. In
Yeah, they're real
ring.
wrestlers. It's
like, like Jet Squires. That's Jet Squires, and for whatever reason, he chose in his life to be a fighter in a wrestling ring to be televised on TV. So it was all supposed to be taken in world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought back to people like Gangrel and The Undertaker
mm-hmm.
and people who were supernatural characters.
Mm-hmm.
They pulled it off as best as they could on live TV in the 90s in the Attitude Era. But yeah, I wanted to have that kind of supernatural element to it because it always seemed to be in the wrestling that I was watching. There was always kind of that evil darkness that the good guys had to overcome.
That's super cool. I really appreciate that. It reminded me of, I don't know if you can see the poster on my wall. Do you ever watch any of the old Mexican, the El Santo and the Blue Demon movies? So
no.
they're Mexican wrestlers that were very popular in Mexico, so much so that they made their own film series, and they often fought monsters. That one, I think they fight Dracula, it's like one where they all team up. There's like a Cyclops, the Mummy, Dracula, and Frankenstein, and a bunch of various creatures. So, it's just like guys in Mexican wrestling masks fighting, supernatural creatures. And it kind of reminded me a bit of that a little bit. So, there's a fun angle to that.
Yeah. It was one of those things that I was like, well, I think that's going to make it like different enough. I think that could be a hook for people to get into. And then as the series goes along, I hope I'm able to twist expectations ever so slightly where you're caught off guard.
Well, excellent. I really dig it. It's a super fun comic. So I can't suggest anybody listening check it out enough. It's I believe you can buy it through Sandstone site, right?
Yeah, you can sandstonecomics.com, and they have a little marketplace there. You can get both issues of Glory Bound and any other the Sandstone books there. Yeah.
So is issue 3 going to be a Kickstarter as well?
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's what the plan is. So, I'm currently working on that right now. I'm drawing and working my butt off. So we Kickstarter for issue 2. It wasn't successful. It didn't get funded, unfortunately. But the whole pandemic and everything going on, it was shock but not shock at the same time.
That's hard. I mean, I know quite a few people who have done the Kickstarter, like Andrew Clark did as well, and he didn't get his first one, but the second one went through. So it's just a matter of ringing the bell. It seems like there's a lot of interest in that, and because a lot of creators are going that route to get their books off the ground. Yeah,
it's and I mean, like, we're Glory Bound. We're not trying to like make a profit off the Kickstarter or anything. Mm-hmm. It's there to cover the cost of printing, and that's it. And the second Kickstarter, the cost of everything was higher, so we had to ask for more. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that was an issue with it or not, but didn't seem to go through. But we found a different printer, and we were able to. Like usually with printing comic books, you have to commit to so many copies of an issue, right?
Yeah.
And we found a printer that we didn't have to commit to like a big, massive amount of books. Like we could go in chunks of 50 or 100. Mm-hmm. So we were able to fund that out of pocket, thankfully. And then that gets the book out there. And then that printer, we can always, if we need more issues, we can always go back to them and get more issues. So it was good that way. Glory Bound 2, it got out to the public. So
yeah, it's a great book. And I think you're right about doing the making it an in-world story where the characters are the characters and you get rid of the kayfabe aspect of it. Because even WWE comics did that. Like everybody did that. It's a way easier way to tell the story.
Yeah. That was one of the things, right? Like, it went through a lot of versions. Like it was like the Chibis. It was going to be played around with anthropomorphic, like making all the wrestlers like animals.
That's an interesting bend on it too.
Yeah, I did have a version where it was not kayfabe, right? But you were telling that story. Most of it was going to be in the ring, but I started looking at what was out there for comics. Like there was an Image book called Ringside.
I remember that. I read it for a while. Yeah.
They were doing that thing where it wasn't kayfabe, it wasn't in the world. And I mean, there was even like, I had a crazy wacky version of it too, which still might come back at some point in some iteration somehow, where it's wrestling, but it's Dragon Ball, where if somebody were to do a power bomb, like the guy gets slammed down and the mushroom cloud shoots way up.
Are you familiar with Ultimate Muscle?
No.
Oh, we should look that up. It's very similar. It was it was an anime for a while back in the day that was about professional wrestling, but it was very, very similar. In fact, the main guy's finisher, the Muscle Buster, I believe, is where Samoa Joe took his finisher, because it's the same move. Yeah, so check it out. It could give you some inspiration.
Okay, yeah, I'll take a look for that.
Cool. Well, man, anything else I covered? Anything coming up that you want to talk about, or any events you're coming out to, or?
No. I mean, yeah, we're just, I'll have my head down, getting Glory Bound done. So hopefully we can get a Kickstarter up for that around June or July. Perfect. Hopefully, and then get that into everybody's hands by the end of summer. But yeah, that's it. I mean, other than that, it's just if you want to check out my Instagram and my Twitter and stuff, it's Bright Lancer Art. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on, Brad. I really appreciate talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on. It was
well, I look forward to the Kickstarter. I'll definitely be one of the backers.
Awesome.
All right. See you soon.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was my conversation with Brad Seymour, creator of Glory Bound. Thank you very much to Brad for giving his time and having that chat with me. I learned a lot. It was a lot of fun. It's not often I get to talk about wrestling and comics in the same sentence, so I always relish the opportunity to do so with a new person. And Brad is someone I didn't know previously. Met him through Sandy at the Island Expo, and obviously his book speaks to me, being a wrestler and a comic fan and comic creator myself in the past. Hopefully again in the future. So, I really enjoyed that conversation. Brad was a great guest, and I look forward to issue 3 of Glory Bound and whatever other projects he has on the go. But if I have a homework assignment for you, dear listener, right now, it's, besides go pick up Brad's book, it's, go seek out an indie book. Some, your local comic shop, maybe look online, look on Kickstarter. Find someone that has a book out there that seems interesting to you and just give it a shot. Because you never know what you'll find. Take a chance on a great book, and often you'll be amazed at the diamonds in the rough you'll find out there. So, take a shot. Take a chance. If you change your mind, you don't remember the next line of that sign, something free, take a chance on me. Instead of me, comic books. All right, it's getting late. I'm going to pack it in. Once you start singing songs by ABBA, it might be time to check it in. So thank you very much for tuning in. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time with another episode, just confirming that guest, which I'll announce on social media. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful fortnight, and I will see you next time.